So in the next couple of videos here, I want to spend a little bit of time discussing cellular reproduction. Basically, I want to introduce the topic by just discussing the purpose of cellular reproduction and some basic information about it. And then I want to talk a little bit about, give a very general overview of the cell cycle, and then go more in depth into the various parts of the cell cycle, in other videos. So for now, I just kind of want to give a general overview of cellular reproduction and kind of what it is and why it's important. Okay, so cellular reproduction, reproduction in general is basically passing genes on to another generation, making a copy of yourself, all right? Doesn't necessarily have to be an identical copy when you think about, human reproduction, but when cells reproduce, they do create, genetic identical copies of themselves, all right? So first off, with cellular reproduction, why is this important to know and understand? Okay, because you spend time, in high school and in basic biology classes and in upper levels, cell molecular biology classes, talking about the cell cycle and talking about, the cell division. I mean, most of the time, in general biology classes in high school, you spend, the bulk of the discussion in this topic is about the actual mitosis, the cellular division aspect of it. But there's a lot more to cellular reproduction than that. There's a whole big, series of events that take place even prior to when the cell actually, does the splitting itself. All right. But basically understanding, all the major concepts that go with cell reproduction allow you to understand basically growth and development. You have to remember, we're made out of cells, right? Cells are what make us living creatures, living organisms. They're the functional units of our life. They're the functional units of all life. And that we start out as, a fertilized zygote, and we go from there, when sperm and egg meet up and join, fertilization takes place. Obviously, a lot changes in the next 9 months, okay? And lots of mitosis, lots of cellular division, and a little more specifically, differentiation going on, all right? So growth and development. And then when you're born, obviously you're just a little, bald baby that cries a lot and, but are really cute. And then you grow from there. Okay, so what makes us bigger than when we started? Cellular reproduction. Our cells are constantly growing and dividing like crazy. All right, so this allows us as an organism to grow and to develop and to mature into an adult organism. Okay, so constant cell division allows for growth. All right, now throughout life, we're going to damage our tissues. We're going to hurt ourselves. There are going to be events that occur within the body, that we don't necessarily have control over, that are going to damage cells, all right? And as a result, we need to repair tissues, all right? Now, that's the beauty of being made up of so many different kinds of cells, and knowing the fact that they undergo this process of cellular reproduction allows for repair and regeneration, all right? So basically, if I have a cell in a tissue that's capable of undergoing mitosis, and I damage it, all right, the pre-existing cells that are already there can, under the right conditions, can divide and make copies to replace the damaged cells or the old worn-out cells, all right? So this allows for cellular repair. Now, you know that this doesn't happen everywhere in the body, though, okay? And I'll talk more specific to that in a little bit. But for the most part, this allows for repair and regeneration. And an application to understanding this, basically what can go wrong with the cell cycle, basically is how you understand the biology of cancer. All right, because basically that's what cancer is cancer is just cells that grow out of control. All right, cells that lose their normal ability to reproduce, and as a result, they grow into larger masses than they're supposed to be. They kind of break the normal laws of cellular reproduction. All right, and sometimes, well, I shouldn't say sometimes, but when we say the word cancer, that's obviously a pretty dangerous situation. But sometimes, when cells grow, when they lose the ability to regulate reproduction, they may, grow benign masses, which aren't always dangerous, but they can be. They're not as dangerous as malignant cancerous tissues that grow out of control. All right, and obviously, we'll go a lot more in depth about how cells regulate this reproductive cycle that they undergo on a regular basis. But like I said, what goes wrong with this cycle, will potentially lead into cancer. All right. So like I said, cellular reproduction allows us to grow and develop as an organism, And also, as we grow and develop and we damage tissues throughout life, this allows us to repair and regenerate cells within tissues as long as those cells are mitotically capable. All right, I don't know if that's the right term, but and I say that because there are this repair. I say that because there are certain cells in the. If you want to break down cells into kind of three general categories, we can break them down into their ability to undergo to basically reproduce. All right, to undergo the various aspects of the cell cycle and actually make a copy of themselves. All right. Now, like I said, there are three general classes we can throw these into, and the first one would be amitotic. Remember, when you see the letter A in front of a word, that means without. Okay, and mitosis, basically, that's what you think about when you take a mother cell and it divides and forms two genetically identical daughter cells. All right. Not every cell of the human body is capable of doing this. All right, there are some cells that give up their ability to do this once they differentiate. Okay, remember, think of differentiate as specializing. Remember, we start out as just a bunch of embryonic stem cells, and during the right conditions, during embryonic development, these cells differentiate. They specialize into specific cell types, like neurons or muscle cells, bone cells, and there on out. Right, so some cells, once they differentiate, give up their ability to undergo mitosis. They're just genetically incapable of doing so. All right, and myocytes, muscle cells, especially skeletal and cardiac muscle. All right, these are the common examples you see of this. These cells are unable to divide and make copies of themselves. All right, for example, with cardiac muscle, why do you think when people have heart attacks, it only gets worse from there? All right, when people have heart attacks and myocardial infarctions, and that heart tissue dies, there's no going back from that. Okay, there's no going back because those cardiac myocytes, those muscle cells, do not have the capability of dividing, so they really don't have the they don't have the ability to repair and regenerate. All right, but that muscle cells can get larger though. Same thing with neurons. Neurons do get bigger as we age. All right, neurons are, for the most part, are amitotic as well. All right, but the question is, how do these cells get bigger? Okay, and that's by a process called hypertrophy. All right, so when muscle tissue gets larger, that means the cells get bigger themselves. The number of cells does not increase. Okay, so certain cells of the body are amitotic. They just don't have this ability. And like I said, the practical aspect of this is understanding what happens when something goes wrong with these tissues. Why is the damage so permanent if there's if there's enough damage? And that's why. Because these cells just cannot turn over. They can't divide. There are some cells in the body that are capable of undergoing mitosis, but they don't really do it unless you unless you give, administer some kind of stimulus that induces mitosis and division. All right, and a good example of this are hepatocytes, liver cells. All right, liver cells are not known for turning over at a very high rate, in the body. But what the liver is renowned for is you can, if you need to remove a piece of it, it can regenerate and grow back. You can't remove 3/4 of a liver and hope it's going to grow back. But if you remove, a quarter of it, maybe even a third of it, okay, the liver can grow itself back. Okay, so the surgery, basically produces an environment that stimulates the growth and development and the reproduction of hepatocytes. Okay, so that would be an example of induced mitosis. And then there are certain tissues and cells in the body that just regularly divide. They're constantly turning themselves over all the time. Okay, and a couple common examples of these are, one of the big ones is epithelium. Okay, epithelial tissues are basically, your epithelium is basically a covering type tissue. You find epithelial tissue lining hollow organs, lining body surfaces, lining hollow organs, lining lining hollow organs, covering body cavities. What do you think your skin is? It's epithelium. All right, so and these cells are turning over all the time. Okay, very, very high rate of mitosis. The stem cells in bone marrow, these are turning over all the time. We're cranking out blood cells at a very high rate on a daily basis. A lot of our blood cells die on a regular basis. Red blood cells only live on average for about 120 days. All right, we have to replace those cells that die. All right, and there are certain factors that allow us to do that. There are certain white blood cells that only live for a matter of minutes, and there are some that can live for decades. All right, but still, those ones that live that are kind of in between and have a shorter lifespan, we have to replace as well. Because remember, white blood cells are basically our immune system. We need that defense system. All right, and another very common example of cells that have a high rate of mitosis are male gametes, the spermatozoa, sperm. Okay, I mean, men produce a lot of sperm on a regular basis as well. All right, now one thing to keep in mind about this is that if which one of these three do you think have the highest rates of cancer amongst them? Okay, the amitotic ones, these aren't gonna, because these cells really don't divide at all. Okay, and if they can't divide, how are they really gonna develop into a cancer? All right, because remember, that's what cancer really is uncontrolled cell growth, uncontrolled cell reproduction, making lots of bad copies of cells and from a tissue. All right, so you don't hear about muscle cancer really very often. You hear a lot about connective tissue cancers that may come from muscle. You hear about brain tumors a lot, but brain tumors don't come from neurons. Brain tumors come from glial cells, the support cells of the central nervous system. All right, these induced cells, sure, cancer can come from them under the right situations. Like for example, liver cancer. You don't hear about the liver developing cancer all by itself in normal, healthy individuals very often, but in chronic alcoholics and people who have hepatitis C, sure, because now you're constantly bombarding those liver cells, either with an incurable virus or massive doses of a poison on a regular basis. You're creating a pretty hazardous environment for these cells, and you're creating a need for them to divide. Over time, they're going to lose their ability to divide into normal copies of themselves and develop liver cancer. All right, but the cells with the type of cells that have the highest rate of cancer among them are going to be the regularly mitotic cells, the cells that divide all the time, the tissues that turn over all the time. Okay, basically, think of the law of averages, Murphy's law. What can go wrong will go wrong. The more chances you give, the more opportunity there is. That makes any sense. But you get the picture. Sorry. So basically, these epithelial cells that are dividing all the time, these bone marrow cells that are dividing all the time, these gametes that are dividing regularly. Okay, the chances of them making mistakes throughout this reproduction process are a lot higher. There's more chances to make mistakes. So as a result, there's a higher chance of developing cancer from these highly mitotic cells. All right. So basically, that's just kind of a general overview of cell reproduction. In the next video, I want to talk more about the cell cycle itself. I'm going to talk more about the general aspects of the cell cycle and what goes on during the different phases of that. And then I'll make separate videos that break down the individual parts of the cell cycle more in depth.